Good evening. I want to invite you to turn to the book of Leviticus. Numbers, actually. We'll start in Numbers tonight. I had you for a moment. Numbers chapter 15. If you have a Bible, I highly recommend following along in the text. We'll start in Numbers 15. And while you're turning there, if I can have the ushers come, I'd like to hand out honey bears to every section. And I want you to take the honey bear as it comes by, and yes, I'm serious, and take a tip of your finger and put a big, the technical word is blob, of honey on your finger, okay? Do I have ushers who have these honey things? Okay, they're being passed around. Thank you, honey. And then just let it hang out there on your finger for a little bit, and later we may deal with it, or maybe we won't. But we'll just have that right there. Numbers chapter 15. There are ideas that are great until you actually do them. Numbers chapter 15. I want to talk to you tonight about the world of Jesus. And I want to take you into the first century Jewish world. And I want to show you how the Jews of Jesus' day approached the text. Tonight I want us to dive deep into the world of Jesus and to see how they approached the Scriptures. Numbers chapter 15, verse 37. The Lord said to Moshe, Yahweh said to Moshe, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, throughout the generations to come, you are to make tassels on the corners of your garments with a blue cord on each tassel. You will have these tassels to look at, and so you will remember all the commands of the Lord, that you may obey them and not prostitute yourselves by going after the lusts of your own hearts and eyes." Now, the commands of God there is a reference to what's called the Torah. The Jews referred to the first 5 books of the Scriptures as Torah. Now, generally, in the Christian community, we translate that word law, but it's better to understand it as instruction. They believed that God loved them so much that He gave them His Torah, His Word, so that they know how to live. So in Numbers 15, God says this, I want you to remember the commands. So take and put them on the corner of your garments. Now what that meant is that they would each wear what's called a prayer shawl. And you would wear the prayer shawl like this, and it would have the names of God on it. It would have a certain number of knots. And then the command was to put tassels on the corner of your garments. Now, these tassels, the Hebrew word is kanaf, which refers to the borders, and the tassels were referred to as tzitzit. It's spelled T-Z-I-T-Z-I-T. Those of you who are Southern would be like, T-zit-zit, but it translates a little better, tzitzit. Let me hear you say tzitzit. So any good Jew who was being faithful to the text would have a prayer shawl on and would have the hanging from the edge. Now, the Torah is 5 books, the first 5 books of the Scripture, so there are 5 knots. And what you would do is you would take these when you pray and when you walk around. It was a tactile, it was a physical. God is the God of props, the God of visuals. And He understands that if we just hear things, some of us are visual learners, and we need visual reminders. So He says, wear these tzitzit on the edge of your kanaf. We're getting into a groove here, aren't we? And then you will be reminded of the teachings. You'll be reminded how I created you to live. And so when you find yourself being tempted, and when you find your flesh dragging you in directions that are off of God's best for you, may you be reminded of Torah. So any good Jew would have a prayer shawl. To this day, you can see, sometimes you'll see somebody who's Jewish, and you can even see these sometimes if you look carefully. You'll see them hanging down below their shirt or coat. So anybody who is going to be faithful to the text would wear a prayer shawl. Now, a fascinating tradition developed about the tzitzit. The word for borders, where you'd hang the tzitzit, was the word kanaf. The word also meant wings. Can you see how they would have gotten the image of wings from this? Can you see how the... Okay, thank you. Is this on? Hello? And so God's wings were referred to as places of shelter and refuge. And so there's this verse in Malachi. Let me show you. This is just So awesome. Okay, notice Malachi. There it is. There it is. Okay. You guys do everything big here. Okay. But for you, notice this verse. But for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings. This obscure prophecy from the book of Malachi said that when Messiah comes, there will be healing in his kanaf, in his tzitzi. There will be healing in his wings. The crowd presses up against Jesus. A woman who's been bleeding for 12 years elbows and kicks and shoves and gets her way to Jesus, and she grabs hold of the edge of his cloak. No! She grabs hold of his what? Why? Malachi 4. She believes the text. Why does Jesus stop? And he says this, who touched me? And his disciples are like, boss, there's a huge crowd around you. No. Somebody touched me. Why is Jesus so intent on finding out who did it? Somebody in this crowd believes the text and believes that I am Messiah. The edge of the cloak. She grabs Jesus' tzitzi. Any good God-fearing Jew would have a prayer shawl on at all times. Jesus, because he would have been perfect and would have obeyed every last jot and tittle of the Torah, would have been wearing a prayer shawl. By the way, can I tell you something cool? When you go to the temple and you'd pray, you'd enter in and you would say the standard liturgical prayers, and you would do this so that you wouldn't be distracted. You would take your hands and you would fold them like this. And that was called your prayer closet. It's not that place where you keep the brooms and hockey skates under your basement stairs, okay? Jesus says, go into your prayer closet. Now, the discussion became, in Jesus' day, and this was a heated discussion, at what age do you begin teaching Torah? At what age do you begin teaching a young child the first 5 books, the Hebrew Scriptures? How young can a sponge, a child, begin to absorb the words of the text?